All right, welcome to today. You guys ever get those nasty little floaties out of nowhere in your coffee? Trying to ruin my operant coffee. All right, welcome to today's episode of the Daily BA. My name is Ryan O, and I reached out on Instagram asking y'all to basically ask me anything. Door wide open. So this is part 2 of that installment. Here we go. First question is from Operant Coffee. So Beth, thank you for the submission. It's a great one. She asks, you have 5 behavior analysts or behaviorists that you can invite for coffee. Who would it be? Go. So I have a few. The first one would be Israel Golddiamond. I like his nonlinear thinking, his approach to behavior analysis. It's very interesting to me. It maps onto the natural events that I'm used to seeing in behavior analysis. In my opinion, it is just extremely strong and undervalued. Now, an underling of his was Joe Layng, and Joe Layng has carried this tradition forward, done a lot of really cool behavior analytic work. It's just not in the mainstream, I think because he likes to just do behavior analysis as opposed to go through all the politics and hoops and stuff that are typically required to do those sort of things. So those are my first 2. Next one would be J.R. Cantor. And Cantor is the founder of interbehaviorism. And this idea is that everything's bidirectional. That's kind of this idea of inter. It's a different sort of behaviorism compared to, say, radical, methodological, etc. And there are just tomes, just books and books and books. And there's things like a lot of postulates that you have to get through before you even get into the actual philosophy and the theory behind everything. And it's a great area. It's not the easiest reads. For me, it was something that I read always with a mentor, a partner. I have not read all of his works. It is one of those things that's a weakness of mine that I need to finish reading all of his works. But he would be my third, and mainly because of his philosophical and just like really sound foundation for understanding behavior. The next one would be Ogden Lindsley, and that is mainly his ambition and his vision for the future. So this thing called the Behavior Bank was just brilliant. The way that he measures behavior is just leaps and bounds above most, in my opinion. Next, I would invite Xing-Yang Guo. And Guo, he's this guy right here, Dynamics of Behavior Development. He was an epigenetic behaviorist. It was before they were using the term behavior analyst, and this was in the 40s when he was doing a lot of his initial research. He has an extensive, crazy cool history, just insane with what he had to deal with when you're talking about World War II, coming to the States, having to go back to China. He set up a research lab, I think there was like 3 stories, it burnt down. Like, this guy's ambition and drive to be able to understand what he was really interested in, which was basic instincts and how all these things connect together between the biological, your current environment, past environment, the biochemical level, etc. That was just fascinating and far ahead of its time. I'm gonna do a whole another video sometime on that gentleman just himself. It's amazing. So he would be my 4th. My 5th would be, so you notice I'm pairing Joe Layng and Golddiamond together. I'm kind of bending the rules here, Beth. But my 5th would be Steve Hayes. And I know that he appreciates everybody. He's read through all of the works of these other folks. So between him and Joe Layng, I feel like those two at the current table with the other folks there as well, we'd be able to really hash out just what can we really put faith and value and trust in when it comes to these different conceptual models, because there's data and evidence supporting, and there's different things that need to still be sorted out, in my opinion, on the differences between them all. And it's been super frustrating as a student to know which one to fully subscribe to, because I see evidence and support for both the nonlinear approach and relational frame theory and this interbehavioral approach, but they're not at the same point when it comes to science, the amount of documentation, how thorough their philosophy is, their conceptual bases are all very strong but very different. So it would be awesome just to like lock up for maybe a week, have coffee, and sort that out. All right, Swimming in Circles reached out and she said, are you single? We're just going straight in these personal questions apparently. No, I have a lovely woman and I'm not planning on changing that ever. So, sorry. Not sorry, though. It's amazing. So J93 Roach asks, thoughts on average case number or number of clients for a BCBA? I'm going to link straight to a document from the BCBA, I think in 2014, specifically for autism spectrum disorder, but they had rates and caseloads there. Since majority of our work is there, I think you can easily extrapolate that across for most situations. That said, there's conditionals that they put in there. I'm gonna try to have some of them kind of pop up right here. Now there's also different settings that we work in that we don't have this really sorted out or worked out. I have personally experienced anything from a caseload that I was sharing with another non-behavior analyst with a really strong skill set when it comes to educational programming, assistive technologies and such. We shared 55 students, and about half those students were 2 to 1, 2 staff to 1 student ratios. So the number of staff were pushing, I think, 60 or 65 or 70. That was one of the most stressful times during grad school, during my thesis. It was not great. Now, I've also seen one-on-one models implemented almost perfectly. When you look at other models, usually the precision teaching centers, they get fantastic growth rates. I really think that you can employ those and scale those up, and it's just the beginning where we're starting to see that in some educational realms, and we should be seeing that more in the behavioral, and you should be seeing that more in the behavioral reduction realms and those sort of treatment centers more as companies like Chartlytics continue to kind of prosper and push this message out there. All right, Miss M. Lilo asks, what is something about the world you would love to change with behavior analysis? So I think the number one thing is that we don't necessarily know what the hell it is that we're doing. We like to say that we understand behavior and how to influence it, but the sheer number of posts, when you look at anything on social media, from Reddit to the Facebook groups, highlights a very, very big pain point in our field that we are not adequately training people or stacking the deck in the favor to where we're making that information as easily accessible as possible. And an example, when we have to consult the literature for every case and every decision that we make, that is a great step in making sure we understand what we need to do, and that is literally considered best practice and in our ethical guidelines, having mentors and such. There's a whole rabbit hole of things you can go down there real quick. But let me paint a picture for you. When you go into the doctor's office and you're sitting there, they can literally swing over on their computer. They can type on their computer and find the most up-to-date practices and data being funneled into the decisions that they're trying to make to help you out. There's nothing like this in all of behavioral psychology, like at all. And the thing is, we had people trying to attempt this in the late 60s and early 70s, and it failed, I think largely in part due to the technology at the time. So that is one of the areas I'd like to take this channel in the future, is sharing that idea more and maybe seeing if we can build something like that for the field. And just a quick disclaimer, there are programs out there that train exceptionally well. I think they're just the elite few, and that we need to help make those more scalable, meaning that the same amount of integrity but at a larger scale. That might have been some circular reasoning there, but we're just gonna go with it. And the number one reason I think we face all these sort of problems is the beast that is capitalism. It's kind of a two-faced monster. You have to leverage it, be able to move forward with your ideas. Like this idea of cash is oxygen is huge, but it's also the downfall, I think, as well. And finding the balance is really tricky, and we'll leave it at that. All right, Auto Lobotomy coming in with the most important question ever. Is a hot dog a sandwich? And I don't know. Like, it's got a bun, it's got meat, but it's unclear. I don't know if it's because of the way that it's sitting, that if it was turned over this way, that it typically would be. This absolutely baffles me sometimes. I don't know. I don't know if the universe will ever know. All right, abatement, I'm gonna go with that. Yeah, do you think there's a diversity acceptance issue in BA, either in practice or with the BACB? So the BACB is the Behavior Analyst Certification Board. First of all, I can't speak on behalf of them whatsoever. I know that there's an upcoming presentation at FABA that they're going to be doing. You can catch them at a bunch of regional conferences to see what it is that they're talking about that is recent and up to date and changes and such. So maybe we'll see something there. Maybe tune in on social, see what happens. There's usually tweets and things that go out about that. I do wish that there was more of an online presence from organizations like the BACB, outside of just pushing about testing windows closing and updates and things like that. Hopefully we'll see that sometime soon, but I'm not in their system, and they have a whole machine themselves to be working through, and I know there's a lot of awesome people doing that. So let's see what they have to say on that topic. My thing is that there's a lot of different angles to be taking on this topic, and one person, especially a white male, behind a camera, in front of a camera like this, is not the end-all be-all to that solution. So it's larger discussions that need to be happening. I was very impressed when I saw ABI, even though it's kind of a last-minute addition, program some time into their conference to talk about these sort of things. There's position statements that are out there. There's even a work group that Megan Miller and others were leading up to try to push on these sort of issues in a proactive sort of way. I can continue to link to those. We did a discussion episode on that with Tyra Sellers, Adele Najowski, and Jonathan Tarbox. So I can relink that up here. You guys can check that out. It was the same call to action though. It was pushing in that work group, because I definitely think that it is not an issue. Like, there is an issue here. The degree to which we just don't have a lot of data around and an understanding around, and so these movements like the Uncomfortable BCBA and the discussion groups in there, it's time to start seeing those things put into data action science, which I know is happening. It's just not communicated. It's not communicated quickly oftentimes. So we're hoping to bring discussions like that from Uncomfortable BCBA's leaders, Megan Kirby and Barbara Kaminsky, into our next gen event. So I'm doing what I can with the systems and possibilities around me that I have to try to bring these things more to light, but it is just one aspect that I can try to help out with the people around me who value that sort of stuff. There's other things as well. So I know that there's a publication journal specifically on this. I'm guessing in the Behavior Analyst in Practice. I'm not exactly sure. Jonathan Tarbox is leading that up. It was specifically to look at these sort of things. So this research arm is another part of it. Yeah, it's just a lot, and we need everybody to come together for it. And until that happens, I think we're going to have a lot of difficulty in really getting a coordinated effort moving forward. I know that it's an issue. I've heard stories. I have some stories of myself that are related in a way that I'm not at liberty to share. I'm excited to see what we get coming out of these sort of coalitions and things moving forward, conferences like WEBA, etc. But I'm skeptical until everybody shares the same contingencies and not just the same value statements. It's my understanding of behavior. We need those contingencies aligned. All right, Julie Juice asking, how do you explain error correction using a transfer and test trial? If this is a test of if I'm like really sharp in my clinical in the moment, like in the chair skills, touche. I stepped out of that realm about 4 years ago, and I do not feel comfortable answering that question. I'm gonna try to defer you to my homie Miranda Drake. Hopefully she's watching this, or any other viewers down here that want to describe that and are very good at that. That's the best I can do. I hope you understand. Like, I'm trying to demonstrate when I get past my competencies here, and that is one of them. It could be that I just need some more information. I don't use the transfer test trial sort of language. Understanding basic discrete trials and transferring stimulus control procedures, like I've got those really down. So maybe just a phone call or a chat a little bit more would help me sort that out. So feel free to give me more information in a direct message maybe, and we can chat that out more. All right, Tyler Basier says, who's your favorite cousin? Clearly you, man. He's my homie, he's my cousin. But he asked another question following up, so thanks for the little troll there. What is OBM? Is it like a subfield of behavior analysis? So that's a great question. Our field made up organizational behavior management as this kind of off branch of a technology of behavior analysis. Technology meaning that we're bringing together tools, think of apps, software, and those sort of gadgets and such, as well as processes, how we're going to actually do things. And that's a behavioral technology. Those come together into something like OBM. And it is known in our field, and only in our field largely, I would say, because it is something that we made up and we have to get out there. There's places that you can see, go out there, get your degrees, your certificate programs that are pushing that out there, getting it into organizations. There's work in the OBM network, people going out there, making that name more widely known. Just know that it is not known by the entire world, just like behavior analysis is not known by the entire world. And it's something that will be known more as we have more people in that area, more people doing work outside of our traditional funding streams and in solely that organizational behavior management work. So folks like Tom Gilbert, Aubrey Daniels, these are the sort of pioneers, leaders of the field that are out there doing those sort of things and making that name for it. There's a lot of younger leaders doing that as well in the OBM network. You can go learn more if you're interested. I'll do my best to remember to link it, but you can also just search it. And my last point is you can go out there and get a degree or certificate in these sort of things, but you can also go through the mentorship supervision process. That's what I did. You're not going to have the same thing to point to, like if you got the certificate from say like a Florida Tech or such, but I've been widely successful in OBM just going through and understanding and learning from my mentors and keeping a strong network next to me and around me that has always been OBM organized and focused. All right, Lena Kanita, nice to see you, Lena, was asking, what is one thing that you wish you would have paid more attention to as a graduate student? I wasn't the best at making friends. All of us were so passionate of understanding behavior analysis and every nook and cranny of it that we possibly could that we would never shut it off. And this became problems sometimes when we had like student events where the two campuses at Florida Tech were coming together, and we would argue until we were blue in the face if it meant that we didn't have to claim that we were wrong. We would just argue. And not to the point that I'm like personally going for you by any means, but we would push each other very hard to be as perfectly conceptually systematic as possible and make sure that we were speaking in a way that we really understood what it was that we were saying, and we were kind of synthesizing everything that was going on that we were learning across all these different areas, like from those different people I mentioned earlier in this episode that I have coffee with. So don't be an ass, I would say. I've had to rekindle some relationships because of those times where I was just trying to understand as much as I could and always be right, and that's not necessarily the point of this stuff at all. Now, the second thing I talk about on here frequently is that there's a world outside of here of this behavior analysis. There's everything that's not behavior analysis is still valuable to learn. This is something that I picked up from Steve Hayes, I think on a listserv or something. He was talking about something where he'd make sure that he read mainstream psychological research because they asked very important questions and things that people were very interested in. And you look at it through our own lens. So entrepreneurship, marketing, sales, any sort of ways in which the influencer world on YouTube, social media, I've been looking at those sort of things, but through our own lens. Some of the best influencers of behavior, almost all of the best influencers of behavior when looking at the masses, are not in behavior analysis. We may understand parts of it way better than anybody else, but there's other people that have a lot more traction that we can learn from as well. So that would be something else, is step out of our hole, make sure that you're looking around, seeing what else is going on, because the only way we're going to actually move forward is through collaboration and working together with other professions. It's not going to be just us. If it's just us, I'm almost completely sold that it's just never going to work. It's going to completely fail. And I think that's why we run into some problems in our field, but that's to be determined. It's an empirical question, etc. We'll see where we're at in like 30 years. So that's the last question. If you guys have any more, let me know down below. Love to chat more in the comments. If you're into this, and only if you're into this, it makes a huge difference to hit that like and share button. Send it off to a colleague maybe. Tell them, hey, check this out. This is something that's fun. The Patreon community consistently keeps growing. Thank you for your support. That is the only way that I can keep with this channel. The 60-hour weeks and such, they're fun, they're exhausting, and y'all keep me fueled. So thank you very much. That link is down below as well. And that's your Daily BA. Standard acceleration chart is largely put into these journals of precision teaching. And I think these are some, these are all them, all older ones, right? Now, these things were discontinued in somewhere around 2014, and I reached out to some of the leaders in the community